If you take the long 15 down south towards the Mojave outpost, eventually we see the road dip down and we find a settlement. As we get close, an NCR soldier takes us aside.
Hey, where the hell do you think you're going? Primm is off limits.
Oh, so the name of this place is Primm? What's going on in Primm?
Some convicts from the prison up the road have taken over the town. Everyone inside is either dead or in hiding. What's more, there are 2 tribes of raiders causing trouble in this area as well. You'd be safer heading back up to Good Springs.
Well, you're from the NCR. Shouldn't you be protecting this town or something?
We'd love to, but they don't fall under NCR jurisdiction. Even if they did, we're in no shape to protect them.
Why can't you protect them?
We don't have the equipment to take out the convicts. And even if we did, we need some extra hands for backup. You should talk to Lieutenant Hayes. He's in a tent down the road. Just stay on the west side of the overpass if you don't want to get shot.
Instead of following the road down where we just find a bunch of wrecked cars, we can turn west where we find an NCR encampment. Heading through the ruins and across the road, we see the major encampment behind some sandbag barricades and roadblocks. Here we find 2 tents and a barrel on fire, and standing next to the fire is Sergeant McGee.
I'm Sergeant McGee of the New California Republic Army, 5th Battalion, 1st Company. If you want to talk about something, speak to Lieutenant Hayes.
Where are you from, Sergeant McGee?
I'm from the hub originally, but it's been a long time since I saw it. I'm on my 2nd tour here. Most non-commissioned officers are.
Well, it sounds like the lieutenant is inside the big tent. Heading on in, we find Lieutenant Hayes just milling around.
I'm Lieutenant Hayes of the New California Republic Army, 5th Battalion, 1st Company. What's your business?
What are you all doing out here?
We were sent out here to hold back the tide of convicts from the correctional facility. As you can probably tell, we aren't doing the kind of job we could be doing.
Well, at least you're able to admit it. What's the problem with your mission?
The mission isn't a problem. The problem is with supplies. The convicts are better armed and organized than our intel initially suggested. I'm trying to get some reinforcements here, maybe some guns with some firepower, but shit. Things are just going slow.
Tell me about the correctional facility.
Most people just call it NCRCF. That's NCR Correctional Facility. A little bit ago, the convicts there staged a coup, killed the guards that weren't able to escape, and have been ransacking the area since then.
Do you have any information on the convicts?
Not much. They've taken to calling themselves powder gangers, mostly because they've taken to using the explosives meant to clear boulders as weapons. They got organized faster than I would have thought, most of them at least. Thankfully, the small group in town here seem to have split off from the main force, so they aren't getting anything in the way of support.
Well, the man seems demoralized, which is a common theme we find amongst the NCR ground troops. But despite the warnings from these men, we can go ahead and explore the town of Primm. Heading over to the overpass, we find it booby-trapped with frag mines. These, I believe, were likely laid by the NCR to protect themselves from the powder gangers. As we inch slowly across the road, we see an abandoned gas station off behind a big building next to some shacks. But following the main drag past a blasted-out Corvega, we see the Bison Steve Hotel loom before us. And it's here where we meet our first powder gangers. Even though from a lore perspective, these are powder gangers, from a game mechanics perspective, they are not considered part of the powder gangers faction. Instead, they're all called escaped convicts. So we can feel free to kill these guys without ruining our powder gangers' reputation. I believe we are supposed to presume that these guys broke off from the leadership of the powder gangers at the NCR Correctional Facility to do their own thing. But they have clearly terrorized the town of Primm. Heading along the road, we see a ruined building to the right, and lying right outside the door is the body of a man who's been shot in the head. He was killed not long ago. The blood splatter from his head is still red on the window. On his body, we find the Mojave Express delivery order 4 of 6. This rather long-winded document simply gives this courier instructions on how to deliver his package. He was ordered to deliver the package at the entrance of the Las Vegas Strip by way of Freeside. After delivering the package, he would receive the payment from the person who picked it up, and then he was instructed to bring the payment back here to Primm to deliver it to a man named Johnson Nash at the Mojave Express. He would have received a 250 caps bonus upon completion. We learned what the package was. It was a pair of oversized fuzzy dice. So he did not have the dice on his body, but since we find his corpse right here outside the Mojave Express, he likely had the 250 caps, which I guess is enough reason for the powder gangers to have killed him. Heading inside the Mojave Express, we can explore this place. We find a damaged iBot lying on the counter. This is an advanced model robot with a reinforced frame. It is well weathered and appears to have seen a good bit of action. There is very little in the way of serious damage. In order to repair this sucker, we have to have a repair skill of 65 or higher, a science skill of 55 or higher, or we need to have some spare components on our inventory. This, of course, is everyone's favorite iBot, Ed E. I'm not going to tackle this in today's video. Instead, I'm going to save him for a special video. Just inside, we find the Mojave Express drop box. Welcome to the Mojave Express. Mojave Express drop boxes like this one can be used to deliver items to any Mojave Express drop box that you've discovered. Once you find a Mojave Express drop box, just activate it, and you will be able to use that location to send and receive items. There are 5 Mojave Express drop boxes in the Mojave Wasteland, most of which are conveniently located close to potential player homes. One, of course, is here in Primm. The next one is on the deck to the Goodsprings General Store. Goodsprings is where we start the game and where we begin to collect possessions. The next one is in Novak. We find it in the lobby of the motel, right next to a couch. Novak is one of the first places where we can get a player home, and by the time we're ready to leave, we have likely accumulated quite a collection. The fourth one is in Freeside, right next to the old Mormon fort. We find it on a street corner next to an old bus stop. Since we have the potential by completing the quests at the Atomic Wrangler to get a player home at the Atomic Wrangler, I believe this one was designed to make it easy to ship our goods from Novak to the Atomic Wrangler to put in our player home. And the final one is inside the Las Vegas Boulevard station on the Strip. This is right next door to none other than the Lucky 38 Casino. Once we find it, we can ship all of our goods from the Atomic Wrangler by way of the drop box outside the Mormon Fort to this one so that we can pick them up and haul them on over to the Lucky 38. They're really easy to use, although they function differently from typical containers. Upon activating, we first have to choose a destination. In this example, I'm going to ship some goods to Primm. We then choose what we'd like to ship from our inventory. Then we just travel to the destination, where we find that the little red flag is up on the Dropbox. Upon activating it, we can collect our items, which get deposited in our inventory, and the flag goes down. There's no limit to these drop boxes, so we can move great quantities of very heavy items long distances as fast as we can fast travel. Although when we retrieve our items, we retrieve everything, so we can get encumbered very quickly. The Mojave Express is also the Nash's residence. They must have left in a hurry. We see dinner laid out for 2. But no one took the time to eat it. Since this is their private residence, looting any items would amount to theft. So instead, we're going to head out and see if we can find these poor people. Right across the street from the Bison Steve Hotel and the Mojave Express is the Vicky and Vance Casino. Even though the windows are all dark, the big marquee sign is still dancing with light. Immediately upon entry, we find Johnson Nash.
I don't know what it was brought you to Primm, youngster, but you might want to rethink your plans. Town's gone to hell.
Who are you?
Johnson Nash is my name. Husband to Ruby Nash. Lived in Primm going on 8 years now, thick and thin. I'm a trader primarily, for what it's worth with things like they are. I also run the local Mojave Express outpost.
Now from Johnson Nash, we can learn a lot about the courier. We learn more about what kind of package it was we were delivering and about how the Mojave Express operates. We also get some foreshadowing to the Lonesome Road DLC. I will be going through this information meticulously when I do my video series on Lonesome Road and when we meet Ulysses. But for now, let's focus on the immediate plight of the residents of Primm, and that's dealing with the powder ganger situation. Hey Johnson, I've got some questions about Primm.
Well, I'll answer what I can.
What happened to this place?
Let's see. Been tough around here for a good while now. Worse since them thugs kidnapped our deputy. It started with the breakout from the prison up the road. First there was just a few thugs rolling through town, but then they got organized. Now they call themselves powder gangsters or something, and run around throwing dynamite and shooting people. Little while ago, a good chunk of them left whatever kind of organization they got up there to squeeze all the food and drink out of us they could.
Why do you keep calling them gangsters? I thought they were called powder gangers.
Gangers, gangsters, all sounds like trouble to me.
What's at Vicky and Vance?
That's where we are. This here little casino brought some cash and bodies into the town before them powder gangsters came in. Now, they can't rush us without eating a good bit of hot lead, but we are in a kind of box canyon. Guess this is a fitting place for that as any. I reckon that if they thought hard enough about it, they'd realize they got more bodies than we have bullets. But for now, we're safe enough in here.
Tell me about the Bison Steve across the street.
It's an old hotel and casino here in town. Old Laura used to rent out rooms there, but she took off months ago. Across the way from the Vicky and Vance, the other old casino. Can't miss it.
So you say the powder gangers kidnapped Primm's deputy?
Right now, Beagle is the closest Primm's got to any organized law, but he's still stuck up in Bison Steve. First thing I'd say is get his sorry butt out of there. Well, you can call Beagle a deputy so long as you don't harbor too high an opinion of the word. Boy was about as useful as tits on a rad scorpion. Only qualification he ever had was to be brother to the wife of the sheriff. Still, I suppose he don't deserve what's befell him. We would have considered paying the ransom if we'd had caps to spare.
All right. Man, that would be an interesting rad scorpion to meet. You know, I looked and I couldn't find a mod that gave us rad scorpions endowed in such a way. I'm honestly kind of surprised someone hasn't made that mod yet. Now, the Vicky and Vance Casino is a fascinating place, and there are some unmarked side quests here, but I want to tackle that in tomorrow's video. For today, let's focus on saving Deputy Beagle and exploring the Bison Steve Hotel. Now, the powder gangers are crawling around all over the place. We already killed a few out here, and there are some walking the roller coaster tracks just outside. Before we head inside the Bison Steve, let's run around back to explore those two little shacks that we saw upon entry. The first is Deputy Beagle's residence. This is the guy we need to go save. He's got an engine on the ground and not a whole lot in here. His locked personal footlocker just has some minor loot inside. So heading out and checking out the other shack, we see that this was the door to the sheriff's office. Inside, we see the sheriff's desk to the right, some minor scraps set out, and a reloading bench here. And then turning around, heading west, we see the sheriff's bedroom, and we see the naked bodies of the sheriff and his wife. The powder gangers snuck in here in the dead of night and brutally murdered Sheriff Beagle and his wife while they were sleeping. Their clothes are still folded up and set out, just where they put them before going to bed. So now it's time to clear them out of the Bison Steve. Heading inside the casino, we find ourselves in a casino lobby, and it's dark. We find a reception desk with a locked terminal. Hacking the terminal allows us to open up a door to a supply closet to the left, but just as we do, we attract the attention of some powder gangers.
You like that?
I'm gonna try and be a little bit more sneaky from here on out. But clearing the Bison Steve Hotel is a great way to arm up at early levels. Heading into the supply room, we see that it was also an employee break room. On the table, we find a Bison Steve maintenance key. This is going to be important later. The gun cabinets have some good stuff. We find Med-X on the ground, some bottle caps, and some Rad-X. And there's some minor food in the fridge. There's a locked wall safe, which just has some beverages inside, and then we can loot a first aid kit on the shelf. Now that it's clear we can head through the double door, we see that the powder gangers have used tables as barricades. And rounding a corner... This guy startled me. The door immediately to the left leads to the gift shop. There's an assortment of goods in here. We find lots of toys and teddy bears. And on the ground behind the counter is a copy of Tales of a Junktown Jerky Vendor, lying right on top of a floor safe. The floor safe is locked with a really hard lock. You'll likely have to come back and loot this thing at a later date. I didn't come back and loot it until I was in my 30s. But if you can unlock this sucker, we find quite a haul indeed. Weapons, a lot of ammunition, a whole bunch of chems, and the unique revolver, Lucky. As a pistol-wielding, revolver-loving character like mine, I was really excited to pick up this guy. It's one of the better revolvers in the game. It's named after this casino. The Bison Steve is the name of the hotel, but Lucky was the name of the attached casino. It's the best .357 Magnum revolver in the game, even better than the police pistol we can get from Dead Money. It does 30 damage and fires rapidly, doing 2.75 attacks per second, bringing the DPS up to 82.5, nearly 20 points greater than the police pistol. The police pistol does a bit more critical damage, but Lucky has the lowest action point cost of any .357 Magnum revolver, at only 17. Compare that to 26 for the regular Magnum revolver, making this thing dynamite in VATS. It has the second highest potential critical hit chance of all one-handed guns in the game. The only one that's better is the silenced .22 pistol. It looks great too. It's engraved with fancy flourishes. It has an ivory grip with a little clover on it. We see a spade carved on there and the words Lucky engraved on the barrel. It's also a holdout weapon, which was the only reason I was keeping around a police pistol, so I'm pretty happy for the upgrade. This in the hands of a courier who has the cowboy perk is one deadly little weapon. The ammunition for Lucky is pretty rare at lower levels, so you're still gonna see me use my 10mm pistol and varmint rifle for much of this footage. After killing the powder ganger upon leaving the gift shop, we find a broken elevator. Now we can try to repair this sucker, but we need a repair skill of 35 or more to do so. So instead we're gonna continue on. Now we find a door to the left. This leads to a maintenance hallway. The key we got in the supply room behind the front desk unlocks this thing, and on the other side we immediately find another powder ganger. Sneaking down the hallway, we arrive at a kitchen where we find Deputy Beagle. His hands are tied and he's kneeling down, but turning right, we see more powder gangers in the adjacent room. But there are 3 total. Their boss was hiding behind the big Brahmin.
Enough.
And he was wielding an incinerator. Ouch. When done, we can talk with Deputy Beagle.
I don't suppose you came here to rescue me. I'd cross my fingers, but my hands are numb.
You must be Deputy Beagle.
Why, yes I am. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm in a bit of a predicament here. I'd be most appreciative if you'd set me free.
How'd you end up being a hostage?
I must say it's been the low point of my career in law enforcement. The powder gangers stole into town at night and murdered my sister and her husband, the sheriff, in bed while I was sleeping in the office. I watched them for a bit, waiting for the right moment to pounce and arrest the lot of them, taking careful notes as I watched. To my dismay, they found me while I waited in the shadows and brought me here.
I hear you may have information on some cons that came through here with a guy in a checkered suit.
My good lady, I believe I may have some information that would prove useful. If you would just untie my hands, I'd be more than happy to share that information I have with you.
Come on, just tell me about those guys who passed through town, please.
I'm in quite a state here. If you help me with my bonds, I'll be more than happy to tell you anything and everything about those cons.
Tell you what, you can tell me now, or you can rot here.
Well, you look to be a trustworthy sort. Okay, I'll tell you what I know. I overheard them saying that they're on their way to Novak. If you want to follow them, I strongly suggest that you follow the road through Nipton. There are a lot of dangerous things out in the desert. You won't have me with you to protect you, as I need to stay here and keep Primm safe.
Now, I get the impression that this guy's gonna be more trouble than he's worth, so I'm gonna leave him here for now while I clear the hotel.
No need to rush on my account. I lost feeling in my hands and legs hours ago.
Heading into the big room, we can loot the bodies and loot the place. They've got this big Brahmin on a spit. Looks like they were getting ready to have a feast. Since we can't repair the elevator, this leaves one way forward. We find a snack corner with an Edotronic and some Mentats inside, and a door that leads to a staircase which brings us up to the 2nd floor. We find a powder ganger as soon as we arrive. Heading down the hallway, we see the elevator where we would have stepped out had we repaired it. Next to it is a door locked with an easy lock. Inside we find a doctor's bag, a first aid kit, and some other minor loot. Past the elevator, we can continue down the hallway until we round a corner. I kept seeing powder gangers appear on my compass, but they were nowhere to be seen. They must be behind these doors. Checking door number 1 leads to a big ruined hotel room with nothing inside. Checking door number 2. Whoa! The floor above has completely collapsed on down. I got distracted trying to explore this ruin and I didn't even notice the powder gangers attack me from above. And of course, the commotion of this battle lured the rest of the powder gangers in the area right to me.
Anybody there?
So much for stealth. I couldn't seem to get up, so heading down the pile and back in the hallway, we can kill one more powder ganger who was on his way, and another one who peeked out to see what was going on. The next room over has another big broken floor, but this one's formed a ramp that I think I can climb up. We'll head on up there in a second. I want to finish exploring this floor first. The next door over has a suitcase on the bed that was empty, and a whole lot of pre-war clothing inside an armoire. Heading out and down to the end of the hallway, we can turn left and round a corner where we find a door that leads to Primm. This leads us back outside. We'll check that out in a minute, or we can turn around to explore the next room. Inside, we find a ransom note lying next to a body on a desk. Mr. Peterson, if you want to see your wife alive again, bring the cash in small unmarked bills to the Bison Steve on Tuesday. On the ground, we see the remains of a man. There's a big puddle of blood by his head. Here's how I interpret the scene. The kidnapper is sitting at this desk writing his note. But unbeknownst to him, Mr. Peterson had already tracked him down to the Bison Steve. Mr. Peterson bursts through the door and with one shot to the temple, kills the kidnapper while he sits in this chair. The body lurches over, hits the ground, and the man bleeds out onto the carpet. This explains why the chair is tipped over, why the body lies exactly where it is, and why there's so much blood by the head. It also explains why we find the note here. Another possibility is that the kidnapper did deliver the note to Mr. Peterson, but Mr. Peterson brought it with him. After he kills the kidnapper, he throws it on the desk in disgust and retrieves his wife. The reason I think this body can't be that of Mr. Peterson is because we don't find his wife here. If the kidnapper had killed Mr. Peterson, he would have likely killed the wife too. He no longer needs her after all, though I suppose she always could have been in on it. Maybe the kidnapper and Mrs. Peterson were lovers, and they staged the kidnapping to get Mr. Peterson to come to this hotel, whereupon they killed him and took off. One final reason why I think this must be the body of the kidnapper is because the note says, "Meet me at the Bison Steve Hotel on Tuesday," but we already know that the bombs dropped on October 23rd, 2077, which was a Saturday. I find it highly unlikely that the kidnapper would have killed Mr. Peterson on Tuesday, and the Bison Steve Hotel would have left this room uncleaned Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, until Saturday when the bombs drop. I think the body would have begun to stink by then. I think it's much more likely that the kidnapper was writing the ransom note on a Saturday. He hadn't delivered it yet. He was doing so from the Bison Steve, and the husband just managed to track him down and kill him. Anyway, we don't find any loot in here, but right next to this room is another room. This one's locked with a very easy lock, and here we find 2 more corpses. But these, I believe, tell a completely different story. Lying on the bed is the corpse of a man with a bunch of blood by his face. On the desk, we find some chems. In the suitcase, we find some chems. And in the bathtub, we find another skeleton. This one with her hand dangling down on the ground, where we find a bunch of chems and a knife. I think that these 2 people were unrelated to Mr. Peterson and the kidnapper in the next room. Instead, I think this were probably just a bunch of druggies who likely either OD'd just before the bombs dropped or were in the process of ODing when the bombs dropped. Anyway, that leaves this floor explored. We can go back into that room with the collapsed floor that formed a ramp to head upstairs. This brings us to a room that does not have much in it, although we can shimmy across the wall to find a bathroom, where we find an armor case, which sadly doesn't have any good armor. It's got 2 copies of a Merc Adventurer outfit, which I suppose will be useful at lower levels, and then a first aid kit on the wall, but this is locked with an easy lock. Inside we find quite a stash of goods. Heading out, we find a hallway. We can go over to the snack area where we find a Nuka-Cola machine, but the hallway is completely blocked. We can't go any further. So turning around, we can round this hallway where we find one open door to the right. This leads to a room that was connected to that one room where the powder gangers attacked us. Here we find their bodies and we can finally loot them. On one of the bodies we find a Bison Hotel cabinet key. This unlocks a gun cabinet that we find in this room. Inside we find 22 rounds of .357 Magnum ammunition, which is great. We can use this with the lucky weapon that we just found. We also find a 10mm pistol, a bladed gauntlet, and a cowboy repeater. Some pretty good stuff. In the big ruined room right next to it, we can shimmy on over to the bathroom where we find another skeleton in a tub. This one also has some chems lying around it and some empty bottles of whiskey. Does this kind of stuff typically happen at casino hotels? If so, remind me to never stay in one. When done, we can head back down to the room below and go out that one door that we found that leads to Primm. This puts us out on a balcony that connects directly with the roller coaster tracks. Now, there's not a whole lot of loot out here. We can turn left to go down the tracks, which eventually leads to the ground. That's how we get out. But we can get to the big portion of the tracks if we want to. Turning all the way around and following the tracks all the way around a big loop, we can walk to the very top of the tracks. But we do find a powder ganger there. Sadly, we don't find anything at the top. However, if we go to the ground and then climb up the broken roller coaster tracks that lead south up to the roof of the Bison Steve, we find a tidy stash of chems, booze, and cigarettes behind the casino facade. Now that the whole casino and hotel is explored, we need to go inside and retrieve Deputy Beagle.
It would be so very delightful if you set me free.
All right, I'll set you free now.
Oh, that's just marvelous. I think I'll be making my way outside now. The air's a little close in here.
Hey, wait, I didn't cut you loose so that you could run away. Stick with me.
Oh, that's so gracious of you to offer to bodyguard me like that. But I'd only slow you down. See you outside.
Sure, run away. You don't look like you'd be much help anyway.
Then I'll defer to your superior appraisal of character and prowess in contests of arms and see you outside.
Or we could pass a speech check to say, if you try to run away instead of fighting at my side, I'll kill you myself.
Oh, why, of course. I'd never let you fight my kidnappers with my help, but without it. You lead the way.
In this way, Deputy Beagle turns into a temporary companion. We can even trade with him to give him better gear.
If we were to miss a convict or two in here, who'd know the difference?
Here, Beagle, take a weapon.
I just hope I won't have to use it.
On his inventory, we find Deputy Beagle's journal, which is an audio holotape.
This is most unusual. The powder gangers have visitors today. I guess there's a first for everything. Now those tough-looking fellows must be great cons. I recognize those funny helmets and leather vests from stories I've heard. So what are they doing with that dapper gentleman who wears a checked suit? I wouldn't mind a suit like that. They're talking about heading south toward Nipton, then west to Novak where they'll meet up with someone. I guess I could track them if I needed to, but the town of Primm needs me here to serve and protect. Oh my, I think I've been spotted.
This guy is so sleazy, but I love him all the same. Oh my, I think I've been spotted. So we can always kill him for this audio tape, which gives us all the information we need to learn to track down Benny, or once we head outside, we successfully rescue him and we can then talk with him.
Well, that was quite an adventure. We taught those convicts a thing or two, didn't we? Breaking myself out of a hostage situation, not to diminish your role in it, of course, but it was quite thrilling. Problem is, there's still no law in Primm. What are we to do the next time ruffians menace us and hold us hostage?
What are you talking about, Beagle? You're the sheriff now.
Oh, no. I'm just a deputy, and I can't be a deputy without a sheriff. It's called chain of command.
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, what are the qualifications for a sheriff?
It should be someone brave like you, but more of a homebody. Someone who'll settle down and watch over us. I heard the powder gangers talking about someone in the prison named Myers who has some experience as a sheriff. He may be a good choice. Also, with the NCR so close by, you may be able to get them to take over the town. Not sure why they haven't helped out already.
Oh, all right. I'll help bring law and order back to Primm.
You will? That's just marvelous. I'll start thinking up questions for the interview. The sheriff that was incarcerated up at NCRCF may be a good choice. You also may be able to convince that NCR guy across the road to take the town under his wing. Although martial law doesn't sound so fun.
So we finally have all the information we need to continue on with the primary quest of the game, or we can stick around here in Primm for a bit to see if we can help these folks. We need to find them a sheriff. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video, folks, where we will fully explore the Vicky and Vance Casino, get a sheriff for the town of Primm, and complete a few unmarked quests. We'll be following up with the Powder Gangers more this week. We're going to check out the NCR Correctional Facility, and we'll even track them down to Vault 19. So if you want to make sure you don't miss any of my videos this week, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I've got a brand new shirt in the shop, folks. Perfect spot for a Mirelurk den. It has X688 on the front and some vicious Mirelurks on the back. If you're interested in the shirt or any of my other merchandise, you can find a link to my shop in the description below. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early with a brand new video.